Hey everyone, it's Terry with Terry's Tidbits. The admin study group met today and they did a fantastic job covering user management and security controls. So you're not going to want to miss this particular video. This is a big piece of the admin certification is some of those security things specifically. So definitely check out today's video. Also check out DMACC.edu. They are our sponsor for this entire series. We're so thankful for their participation, their partnership in putting this together. They are our local Des Moines area community college with a lot to offer, continuing ed as well as your typical coursework that community colleges have to offer. Fantastic partners. Check out their website, and let's jump into our videos. Hey everyone, it's Terry with Terry's Tidbits. I am so glad you're here.
So I'll be going over user management and maintenance that is attached with that. And what is a user? Within Salesforce, a user is really just anyone that can access your Salesforce organization. And so then every user is going to contain a username, an email address, first and last name, a license, and an optional role that defaults to none. And then there's also a bunch more settings they have. So like locale settings. So if they're like on the West Coast, you can set their time zone to be a West Coast time zone, just miscellaneous personal information. So things like their title or address, and then you can do things like activate or deactivate their account from there. And then I'm not going to get too much into things like the profile today because I think that's next week's topic for Robbie, I believe. Yeah. And so we'll cover more of that. But user maintenance. So a Salesforce admin will have a lot of general maintenance with the user. And so they'll do things like reset a password if someone hasn't logged in for like 6 months and just doesn't remember their password, update permissions, update various fields. And so if someone, say, moves or they change emails, the Salesforce admin would be able to change that. They'd be able to freeze accounts in situations where you would need to do that. Following up with deactivating or activating accounts. And then also do things like manage the roles and run reports off of those users.
So let me pause you for just a second, Aaron. And on the freeze versus deactivating an account, what would be the difference between the two? And when might you use one versus the other?
So you would typically use a freeze when you want to just prevent them from logging in. And so scenarios or you would want to freeze them to prevent them from logging in. And so a scenario for that might be someone's account got hacked. And so you want to prevent someone from logging into that account. Okay. And you can't always just deactivate an account. Sometimes, like if that user has a bunch of leads or records associated with them, you can't just deactivate them because that would orphan them. And so you need to do a transfer of ownership to someone else before. And so you would freeze first and then transfer that ownership over to someone else, and then you could deactivate.
Another good example for freezing an account would be, let's say somebody is on medical leave. Mm-hmm. You don't want to deactivate them. They may want to come back. They're still technically employed. Yeah. So that is probably something that you're going to want to make sure you understand the differences between deactivating and freeze. That'll be important to know.
And so I have a 4-part scenario where we create a new user with various fields, and then we'll have to update a lot of those fields after this person gets promoted. Scenarios in which we'll freeze his account, reset his password, and then finally deactivate his account after our fake user changes companies.
Okay.
So if you're on the setup page, you can quickly just go over to the user or the quick find, type in users, and that'll pull up everything you need.
Can I pause you real quick, Spencer?
Yep.
The something that I wanted to make sure that was clear to everybody, since we're the first to go, and we've been doing a lot of research about this. I just wanted to make sure everybody knew how to access their playgrounds. Spencer, would you be able to hop to, it's deeper into the presentation, but would you be able to hop to, I'm going to find the slide. Bethany, if you find it before me, because I just want to make sure everybody in the group knows that they can follow along with this demo. So that way you can get all the use of
number
this.
13.
No, yeah. 13, how to access your playground. So you need to go to the Trailhead site, not the trailblazer.me, otherwise it won't show. You click on your head, and then you can see your hands-on orgs where it default gives you a playground for you to start messing with some of these configurations. And now me as a Salesforce noob, I didn't know where my dev environment was. I was like, where do I find where I can play around? And so it took me a few minutes. I'm hoping this helps at least one other person in the class know. But all the demos today, you will be able to follow along and do them with us. And so if you take the time to hop into your organization, it's got all the default setups, and you can follow along with Spencer's demo here. Yep. Sorry, Spencer, back to you.
That's awesome. No, that's very good. Very good.
Really good point. So creating a user, just type in users in the setup page and it'll pull up everything you need. So just click on users. It'll pull up the users list view. If we want to create a new user, it's real simple. Just hit new user. And we're saying his name is John Doe. Say his alias is JD, email test@gmail.com.demo for this one. And I'll populate with some nicknames and stuff.
So what's the difference between an email and a username?
I believe one has to be unique across your Salesforce organization or all Salesforce organizations.
All Salesforce organizations. Yes. Yep. That's your username.
Username. Yep. And I believe that also has to be in the format of an email too.
Correct. Good.
DMACC demo. And then we said his role would be a senior application developer for this scenario. That role doesn't currently exist, so we'll go back through and create that role. He'll have just a standard Salesforce Platinum, and we can't really change the profile after that. Then we can also change the active or deactive here. That we'll do in laters. We'll say he's from California. I don't know their zip codes. And then we can set things like their localization settings. So they're already defaulted to Pacific Standard Time for us in Los Angeles, so that's good. And then down here, we can select generate new password and notify the user immediately. If we don't check that, they won't get an email that this account has been created, and so they won't be able to set their new password.
So that the locale setting there for time zone, if you wanted to default that to a given time zone, how would you do that?
That'd be one of the organization-wide settings, right?
Can't you set your time zone in that? Your company info?
Company
info.
Yep, company info, right. Yep. We talked through that one last week. That's your default. All right,
Spencer,
Yep.
Could you scroll back up? I was curious about what license you used for the demo. Full Salesforce platform?
Yeah, just Salesforce platform.
Thank you.
And your profiles will be specific to that license that's available to you as well. So depending on the license you choose, that'll determine which profiles will be visible for you.
Yep. So we hit save, and that will create the new user, and it will send an email to them saying, hey, your account has been created. That will contain a link. When they click that link, they'll be prompted to set a new password for themselves, and then they can fully log in. We weren't able to create John Doe's role for senior application developer, so we can go over here real quick and create one. So I already have an application developer manager role I made last night. And so if we want this person to report to an application developer manager, we would click add role under this. Fill that out. And then we can select who we want this person to report to or this role to report to. Because we clicked add it under application developer manager, it defaults to that. But for example, if we wanted it to be the CEO, we could do that instead.
Yeah. I want to run back to the users when you have a chance, when you're at a good stopping spot.
Do you want me to go back to the users?
If you're at a good spot for it, yep.
Yep.
And just view the user that you created, the Spencer test or any of them, John Doe. So the checkboxes on the right-hand side of the screen where it says marketing user, offline user, knowledge, flows, Service Cloud, all of those down to, I think there's one for marketing and allow forecast. Our license, we don't have a marketing one because of the license that we chose. Marketing is, it doesn't matter. Marketing user is the first one. So be aware that those are checkboxes that if you want that user to have that ability, you'll have to check those boxes as well. It's a little bit puzzling to me why those aren't part of profiles or permissions, but it's actually done directly on the user record. So if you get a question where, say, somebody can't run a flow, odds are you might check their user record to see is flow user enabled for that particular user. Those would be good examples of some questions that could pop up on you.
Yep.
And they're kind of weird too, because
they are.
Knowledge user is just for creating knowledge.
It's for creating, yes.
Not accessing them. But then marketing user is for actually accessing part of campaigns. So like a user could have a profile permission to access the campaign object, but if they don't have marketing user check, they can't access to create a new campaign.
They can't create
or edit it or.
Yes.
It's really bizarre.
It is bizarre. And they make great test questions, but it is a little bizarre the way that it's configured.
Yeah, the marketing user checkbox gave me about an hour and a half of grief last week. So very, very familiar with that one.
Spencer? Sorry, Bethany, you can go. I interrupted you.
So if you're in there and you get a flow execution error, that could be possibly what it is too. The user can't execute a flow. Or is that something different?
On flow, they wouldn't even be able to see it.
Oh, gotcha. All right. So there's something else wrong if they get there.
Yep.
Okay. Usually those flow error emails will give us a clue as to why the flow broke.
Yep. When you're setting up a user, Spencer, in your example, you named it both test@gmail.com.demo. I was curious if I didn't fully understand the distinction y'all were making, because I know that in our personal thing, we've got .hlc, .qa, et cetera, et cetera. I had been setting up my test users with just their real email address, but then using the username with the appended dots. Is there a certain standard, Terry?
Not for your username. It just needs to be an email format. But typically in your orgs, if you're in your business orgs, you will have, if you set up a sandbox, whatever that sandbox's name is, what's going to be added to the end of that username. Mm-hmm. So a lot of times it will be something like UAT or QT for quality testing. Could be dev. And you could have a number of dev sandboxes that all have different extensions on the end of that username. But the username, the important thing to know with that username is it does have to be unique across the entire Salesforce ecosystem. It's not just your org. It's everybody using Salesforce. So that's an important distinction. It's a good idea to have your email be real, because it kind of needs to be real if you're going to get the invite, if you're going to be able to leverage things. So,
and that's what I was going to ask. In real life, if we did the .demo appended to email, does that work with Gmail? I know there's all sorts of funky things. Okay, so that's what I was curious about for the email. I didn't think it would work with that appended.
Yeah, in this example, you would want to strip off .demo off of the email address.
Yeah. Thank you for indulging my naivete.
When you spin up a sandbox, though, your sandboxes are all going to be Salesforce will add .invalid to the end of every email address. That's just for safety reasons. If you've got people that need to get into that sandbox and receive emails, you'll have to remove that .invalid off of their email address. Otherwise, they won't be able to connect. Because if they connect, they'll get that validation code.
Mm-hmm.
Can't get it.
That helps a lot. Thank you.
Good stuff.
Yep. Then we never added his role. So if we want to do that, we can just go edit his page and the senior application developer role now shows up. And part 2 of the scenario is also he gets a updated job title and address and moves with his new role. So we'll actually just say he's now the manager. And then if we want to change some things, it's really easy. All you have to do is click edit. We'll say he lives in Iowa now, and we'll update his localization settings. We'll just say he's on GMT 6. And hit save. And that handles it. Oops.
Already exists somewhere. That's interesting.
That was updating it. Well, we'll cancel that. Imagine it.
Yeah. I'm not sure why that threw that on you since it was already there.
Yeah.
All right.
But then part 3 of this scenario is maybe he thinks his account has been compromised. And so if you want to prevent someone from logging into the account, you would go to the user's detail page and you would hit freeze. And this would prevent anyone from logging into that account. So if you wanted to dig a bit more into it to make sure nothing has been happened, you can do that. And then you can hit reset password for this user. And that will send them an email saying your password has been reset. And just like the first email they got, it'll send them a link when they click into that, they'll be prompted to enter a new password. And then finally, maybe John Doe leaves the company, and so we have to deactivate his account. Like I mentioned earlier, there's going to be scenarios where you can't always just deactivate an account, because if there's certain records associated with that user, you need to migrate their ownership to someone else, or else they would be orphaned. And so you need to do some of those processes first. And so you would normally freeze them first and then do that. And then finally hit edit and then set them as deactive over here.
So I just want to clarify one piece there. It technically it would orphan those records, but Salesforce will not allow that to happen. So just what they're going to do is keep the owner as John Doe unless you reassign them. But it will not create an orphaned record like a traditional database probably would.
So flesh that out for me more, Terry. So that means, let's say we deactivate John Doe, all of his records would still be assigned to him?
Yeah. It will. If he has records assigned to him, it's going to ask you, what do you want to do with those? And it gives you the opportunity to transfer those to somebody else. And so you can change it real time as it's being deactivated. A lot of times what I will find people will do is they'll freeze an account until John Doe's replacement comes. That way they can then deactivate John and reassign his cases to the new user, to his replacement.
Would the exam ask us anything about account teams? I
don't know.
That'll be like if you have account teams activated. I'm gonna guess that may be an advanced topic. Okay.
But it's good to at least be aware that there is such a thing.
Well, what is an account team?
What is an account team? Yeah.
Oh, well, an account team is something that you can enable in your org, and it allows you to have different roles associated to the account. So it creates a new object, a related object to an account where you can, maybe you've got the owner as
Terry. I've got some useful graphics that might help explain this later, because
okay, cool.
I need to
then
talk
I'll let
about
you
the
take
sharing model, and then so we can jump that in, because it'll be a good precept in next week as Robbie talks about profiles and permission sets too.
Fantastic.
So we can. I got a note to come back to account teams. Yeah.
All right. Awesome.
My bad, y'all. Okay.
All right. I know I'm eating up a lot of your time, so I apologize for that.
Well, that was about it for me. So.
Okay. I'm eating up Bethany's time.
Okay, you can go for it.
Hey everyone, I just wanted to interrupt briefly to again say thank you to our sponsor, the Des Moines Area Community College. Here locally we call them DMACC, dmac.edu. If you are interested in any form of education, continuing ed, please check out their website. We are working closely together to get some Salesforce specific training put together. So check that out if you're interested in learning more and having a classroom style training for Salesforce. Thanks again to the wonderful folks at DMACC.
Okay, so I don't have anything as glamorous as Spencer just showed you, but all right. So really mine revolved around security controls, and it sounds super exciting. Can you see this? It's loading. Can you see that now?
Not yet.
No.
Okay.
Should be. There it comes. It's coming.
Got it? Okay.
Shortly. There it is.
Shortly. Got it? Okay. Sorry. That took a little while. And hold on. Let me adjust my window. All right. So really to look at your security controls, if you did go to the area that Aaron directed you to, if you click on the little gear up by your little user icon, then that should basically take you to the setup area. And then all the way to the bottom under settings is security. I don't know why, since security is so important that they put it all the way to the bottom, but that's where I found it. Unless it's different for other people, I don't know.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. Anyway, just didn't make sense to me. But all right, so that's where you find it. And let me see here. Go to the next one. So really, there were, when I was researching this, there was like 5 different security things that Salesforce, and this was out on like the trailhead and the help area. There were 5 different areas that they really were hitting on, even though if you go under security, there's a lot of different items that are listed. So really the security area, again, as listed here, is going to help you really empower your users to do their job safely and efficiently. You know, typically what you think of security, not like the padlock that's shown, obviously. But you're going to want to really incorporate anything that you think is going to be necessary for your organization. So the 5 basics that they had listed were phishing and malware, manage redirects to basically some external URLs, security infrastructure, security health check, auditing, and the Salesforce Shield. And I'm actually going to go only through a few of those. I was assuming that's okay because I figured it'd actually take up too much time to go through all 6 of those. Sorry, instead of 5. So the first one, security health check. It's basically used to identify and go over any potential vulnerabilities in your security settings. So if you think of it kind of like maybe if you have a DevOps kind of area too, I know that this is kind of super helpful for them using a security health check. It's kind of really just a score to show you how your organization measures against any sort of security baseline. I believe Salesforce actually has a baseline standard, and then the admin is able to upload to 5 custom baselines to use if needed. So, and then they can get there from the setup, and then they can enter the health check in the quick find box, and they're able to find that. So I just listed an example of would be like if you're you can also think of it, I guess, as your credit score. So like say you want decrease your password, minimum length or requirements. Obviously, that's going to decrease your score. Just like if you racked up, $1 million on your credit card, your credit score is going to decrease. So, is there any questions? Terry, you look like you might have a question. Okay, or you want to add anything?
Nope.
Okay. All right. So auditing. Yes, it's basically like, remember, I'm watching you, right? So auditing is going to provide really the information about the use of the system. It's going to be critical in diagnosing security issues, as well as say someone comes to you and says, how many times, has a user been in the system? What did they change? That way the user, then the admin can go in and look at that. And also, if you have two admins, this is also helpful. So you can notice who's been making changes. And of course, someone in your organization should also still do regular audits to detect potential abuse. In our organization, I know DevOps does a lot of that, as well as, basically outside auditors. So in the auditing section, which I can actually show you later, there are record modification fields. So these are the objects that will include fields to store the name of the user, who created the record, and what they modified and when it was last modified. So just basic info. You can also look at the login history, like I mentioned a little bit ago. Say you've got a user and they haven't been in there for a couple months, you should be able to go in there and see, hey, how many times have they been there, or looking at their stuff they need to see. Field history tracking. Basically, it's available for individual fields. It's going to track any of those changes and those values of those fields. And while it's available for custom objects, I guess only some standard ones allow field level auditing. Although I didn't see which standard ones those were. So Terry, if you know, they didn't go into detail on what those were.
I know you can on your lead accounts, contacts, opportunities.
Okay.
I'm not sure if you can on campaigns, but you're probably you'll probably be fine if you just know the main objects there. Lead account, contact, opportunities, cases.
Okay.
You're probably good. Now, one thing that I would add to the field tracking is that does have to be enabled, and it's enabled at an object level.
Okay.
And then the other key piece to know is that it allows you to track up to 20 fields. So you could very easily get a question around things like that. I don't know that there's a question like
fields?
that, but know that so a lot of times that you do have to know the actual number. So yep, there you go. You got it. You got it right there. Perfect.
Sorry, I forgot. I even created that. I was like, okay,
yep.
No, you're good. You're
awesome.
You're good. So yeah, like Terry just said, that's going to show the 20 most recent setup changes, list the date, who made it, what the change was. And the example that I added here was just some of the admin changes. I'll go in and show you, but there's a whole list of different things that you can see. This was kind of just a snapshot. I think, yep. And here's kind of like what it will look like too when you go into view just one of your audit trails. So again, the date, the user, what the action was that they took. Right. So the other one, Salesforce Shield. What is it? Obviously, it's not Captain America's shield, which would be amazing because, Chris Evans and all. So anyway, it's a trio of security tools that helps the admins and developers build extra levels of trust compliance into business critical apps. So, and to be honest, some of this confused me a little bit, Terry, the whole Shield platform encryption area.
Yeah.
You could easily go down a rabbit hole on that one, so I just kind of stopped myself.
And don't, don't, because I don't think you're not. This isn't a test about Shield,
right.
So you don't know that. You just need to know that it exists. That if
and
standard,
what it does, type thing.
Yeah, know that it allows data to be encrypted at rest. It does event monitoring, which basically means that it's similar to the way that the admin audit trail works, where you're able to see what the admin has done, event monitoring, and some of the other features that Shield offers allow you to do that more at a user level. So it's got a lot of power, but a lot of times people are looking for it from a compliance standpoint. Are they concerned about their data?
Gotcha.
Needing it to be encrypted at rest.
Okay. I did find this link. I don't know if it's relevant for us, but I thought it kind of contained some more interesting infos around encrypting and things like that. That might be a little bit more advanced, but
yeah, you probably won't have to get too much. Just you might, if you get a question and you see, you just know what it is, know what Shield is, and you'll probably be fine.
Gotcha. Yeah, because if you go under security and if you look at platform encryption, there's a whole bunch of different advanced settings, as well as like with event monitoring. But yeah, to view your setup audit trail, again, that's all the way at the bottom. But otherwise, and I think we created So not knowing fully what, we were supposed to show on a lot of these, Terry, we created slides for every single one of these things under security control.
I can go through those quickly just to explain kind of the purpose behind them.
If you want to, Aaron. But otherwise, it's just like all of these things that are listed here. So there's many different items under security.
Yeah. I would suggest delegated admin. Just know what that is, kind of by definition. It allows you to grant a level of admin-like access, but to specific roles and objects in the system. So that one's a good one to know for this particular exam.
Part of the purpose behind going through and taking screenshots or figuring out what each of these click-throughs are for, in the course of preparing for the exam, we're going to want to make sure we've clicked on everything and kind of know what it does. And I want this slideshow that we put together to be useful 15 weeks from now. So it's got everything, so you can go faster. You can read through it faster than you can click through everything. While I acknowledge that the kinetic learning of going in and clicking and figuring out what each field is for, I just have every click through itemized in the spreadsheet.
No, that's a good point, Aaron. I didn't even think about that. Yep. Good idea.
Network access is one that will be good to be familiar with. That's where you've got trusted IPs. A lot of times those will be leveraged within your network, so people don't have to get hit with the verification codes.
Activation code.
Yeah.
I cover that in the scenario.
Yep.
Sweet.
Yep.
Password policies you'll want to know. Just kind of scanning through their session settings you'll want to know about, and sharing settings as well.
Gotcha.
And then you've already talked about the audit trail down there as well. So those are the ones that I would think would be most relevant on the admin exam.
Gotcha. Okay.
Cool.
All right. That's really all I got.
Excellent. Take it away, Aaron, and wrap it up.
Okay. Let me get my slide set up. I also do want to impart this. Correct me if I'm wrong. But part of what Salesforce has on the left side, it's always going to be alphabetical. So it'll be like administration, and that's what had users in it, because it's settings, then security. That's why it's at the lowest of the low, because it's the lowest of the subheadings and it's the lowest of the things in there. So that's why security is on the darn bottom. That said, you can always use the search on the upper side if you're looking for a specific item. What I've kind of noticed from a usability standpoint is that the titles of these things can be kind of weird. Like, for example, delegated administration is set up delegations when you click on it. So it's like sometimes the language doesn't match. And I think that's kind of cute to get those idiosyncrasies in. And then I'm sharing screen. Pop.
Yeah, just for fun, in the classic environment, there was no order on any of that stuff.
Oh, nice.
Granted, it was a lot simpler back then to administer, but that was one of the big complaints that they had, and they fixed it when it went into Lightning. So,
is it showing the screen? I'm not seeing the green.
Yep, we see it.
So you can, okay, perfect. So once again, I have how to access your playground in there. For some reason, it doesn't work on the trailblazer.me. It's a different profile setting. It's a different thing. The trailhead, hands-on orgs, and then you can see your connected little sandboxes, dev environments. And like we were just talking about, all of the things under security. So settings, security, we've covered what their basic fields and purposes are in our presentation. So that way we can refer to them later for studying. And we've already covered the fields because Bethany did a great job covering her topics. I did have one question about security alerts. It looks like it is going to be deprecated. Release updates have replaced that. Do you have any more information about that, Terry, before I start on to my scenario?
I'm trying to remember even what it was. No, I don't have anything for you. And I
just noticed while I was clicking through, it seems like related to security, it looks like there's going to be a different way of
I think
out those.
If I remember right, that they used to have what I think they call it release readiness updates now. I think, and they've moved everything together. So that's why it's being, I think that's the scenario with that.
So this is kind of my base slide where I set up what I set out to accomplish in my end part. What I noticed is something about setting up the Salesforce sharing model requires like a philosophical understanding of how everything's put together. So I kind of want to cover that in the example of two different things. We have a sales rep that might be on the road, et cetera. They need to be able to access their data at any hours. And then that using the hierarchies, they need to be able to report up to their role. So their manager needs to be able to see what they have. So that's understanding like how data is handed off between the different roles. Whoops. And then the second one, customer service representative. This is what Terry alluded to earlier with session settings. You can set hours, et cetera, and then you can change their create, read, edit, delete permissions on through various levels to make sure that they don't have access to do things that we don't want them to as administrators. Okay, so over here, this I stole from the Salesforce presentation on kind of 4 different levels of security and how they interplay with each other. So there's org-wide defaults. There's security for things at the object level. Then there's records, which can be permissive on the org-wide defaults with roles. Don't worry, I've got more things to break this down. And then individually, you can almost manually go through and click on fields and say, I want you to be able to show this to this. I want you to be able to show this to this. And then next week, Robbie's going to go over permission sets, which is essentially the super tooling of the different sorts of accesses that can be grafted onto other profiles. So org access and security, you click on security, then network security. You can set IP ranges, login hours. As a quick little hint, if you say 12 a.m. to 12 a.m., that means you can't get on at all that day. Otherwise, if it's empty, that means they have access to it. Scroll down. So org access, IP ranges, login hours. You can set it at the company level. You can also set IP ranges at a profile level. And you can log in hours. You can have your org have generalized, everybody's able to access all the time. But for that customer service role that we'll be building out, we will set them like a Monday through Friday sort of schedule without access on the weekends.
And which one gets precedence?
The profile level would override in that sense. And I have a graph that shows kind of later how they play back and forth.
Perfect.
And then, so I know this is a lot. We can come back and review a lot of this because this is essentially what I spent my last week thinking about. So now that we're on profiles, so we had the org-wide access, this larger one right here. We're going to be working on profiles and how they interact with those objects. So coming back down, what's nice is they give us kind of a standard suite. In this example, it gave us solution manager, marketing user. I didn't see all those in my sandbox, but the standard user has create, read, edit, delete on all the records that they can access. So when you're clicking through administration users profiles, let's hop there right now. Administration on the left side, users profiles, and then we can see all the profiles that we have, and all the different types of users. Let's see. We can create a new profile. Existing profile, I want to clone it from sales profile. We'll call this, and we'll do the custom now. Salesperson. Save. And so we have this, and then we can adjust apps and all these system settings. So you look in here and you can see what we're giving them access to, what their page layouts that they are able to interact with, and so forth. And then look deeper in field level security, what apps are visible to them. These are the tabs in the upper left-hand corner. This is the app launcher. This tells them by their profile what they would have access to. So there's that. their tabs, what they can see. What's important is knowing that the fields that people have access to also affects what they see when they click on reports. So the reports, dashboards, campaigns, it's all dependent on how they interact with these objects. So coming back to our presentation, we have our user, we can edit that. And then, so that's profiles. Jumping back up here to our large meta thing. So that's one way to access, to adjust access. One more deeper than that are roles. So roles are different than profiles in the sense that we're able to give they modify org-wide defaults based on what they have. So for example, if we had create, read, edit, delete on a given record, and we want that to be private in the org-wide defaults. So this might be an opportunity. Let's say a salesperson has a given opportunity, but it's private, which means only the owner of that can see it. Now, with the role hierarchy, we could actually change that to be, we want them to be able to view other opportunities, or we want them to be able to view and edit, or we could say no access. So it would be that. So that's how that layer, the roles overlay with the org-wide defaults.
And that's true for those that are above them in the role hierarchy.
Exactly. So everything kind of trickles up. Your manager can see everything you can do, plus whatever they get to do. So it's a superset.
The way that I always explain the difference between roles and profiles, which is always an area that's confusing to people. And when I went through an admin training course that Salesforce actually led, the instructor would define it this way. When you think about profiles start with the letter P. Think permissions also start with the letter P. Profiles equals permissions. Roles start with the letter R. R equals records. So records also starting with the letter R. Record access. What records can that person see is your roles. Now it's not a 100% rule, but it's kind of an 85-90% rule that's fairly accurate way of looking at the difference and understanding the difference.
No, I like that as a mnemonic device. So definitely remember that. Profiles, permissions, and profiles can be modified by permission sets, which we'll learn more about next week. But coming back to the role, we're working our way deeper and deeper into this tangled mess. I don't expect anybody to fully take away what this is, but this is helping get this sharing model that has to be ingrained in how all of our users are interacting with all of our data. So record access, role hierarchy, scrolling down. I gave you an example of how they kind of cross-leave into each other, but we go deeper. And so we have the baseline access, such as what's dictated by the profile, whether it's create, read, edit, delete, or create and read, and then how we change it in the role hierarchy. We can then go into each individual field and say, I want you to be hidden for these people to simplify the user experience for them. Like, for example, let's say we didn't want the customer service reps to get very jealous of our sales representatives seeing large commission bonuses. If we keep that on opportunity fields, we could easily make that hidden for them. So that way we can avoid that, as well as it avoids clutter for our users. Scroll one deeper. So this, I think, makes it a little bit more simple. So we're starting up. We have our base level of access that's dictated in the org-wide defaults that are inside the security controls that Bethany was showing off earlier, such as IP ranges for network logins, such as session settings for hours of access. And then this is all based upon what we're going to be learning next week with more profile and permission sets. Now, roles seem verticality. Like Terry alluded that the manager has everything that you do, because that's why we set up those kind of trees in the way that it reports up. Now, the sharing rules for record types is more lateral inside those. Oh, excuse me. You go into settings, sharing settings, and this was a larger one in our thing. So you can see all of the org-wide defaults for all of our objects. And so that's how that can be kind of modified here. You have check marks. You have the ability to look and edit these for the org-wide defaults. Hopping back to the presentation. And then manual sharing would be like the field access, going through and setting the accessibility inside individual fields. Hopping back to the Salesforce, security field accessibility. Security field accessibility. And so now you can see all of the fields.
Objects.
Yep. And we can click through these objects and get to their fields, view by fields, or you can have an alternate UX where you view by which profiles interact with set objects. These are fields. And then we have different profiles who we can change their access to. And that's the more manual permission sharing type. So hopping back here, let me see.
One thing I wanted to point out there with the manual sharing. Manual sharing allows the owner or owner of a record, and it might be anybody who has visibility, if but it allows them to manually share a record. That is a feature that is not currently in Lightning. You can manually share records programmatically. So if somebody wrote code, they can manually share a record that think of it kind of like one-off sharing. So for a time period, maybe somebody needs to see an opportunity record, but they don't need to see all of the opportunity records. They just need to see this one. You can manually share that record with them for the visibility.
That is useful because I was like, man, with all these things hidden in each other.
And
how that
security is one of the things that will trip people up faster than anything else, I think, on this exam. So it's a good one to have a good understanding. This whole section that we've been talking about so far is 20% of the exam, and a good chunk of it's going to be security.
So coming back here, we can start working on one of our given user profiles by going to their org-wide access and security, network access rather. And we can set that there. And then session settings, we want to make sure that this, come on. And this is where you can set things like when they get timed out.
That's an important one.
Yep. Session settings, locking IP addresses, identity verification using API calls. I'm trying to think, what else do we have?
And I think I would suggest for this particular exam, I don't think you'll see a ton on session settings. You'll probably want to be aware that it's there. This one will get into more of an advanced admin level. But again, good to know that it's there. It never hurts to understand more than you think you will need. So I don't want to tell you don't study that piece, because it's good to be aware of it. It's probably going to be considered more of an advanced topic.
And earlier, when Spencer was walking us through, you can go to profiles, and we can adjust how these custom profiles, like custom sales profile, let's edit to get our salesperson good. We can choose which apps they have visibility to, connected app access.
And one thing I wanted to show too on this is, if this isn't what your screen looks like, That's because this is an old version of the way the profiles used to be laid out. There's a new version. If you go underneath the user management.
Yes, I actually have a little hint on how to get there, and I'm going to remind myself. Let's see, set up user management settings. Okay.
Yep.
Set up.
Am I the only one that hates the new UI?
There's people are in both clouds. They are camps. They like either the new one or they like the old one, but hate the other.
So another admin in our Engage board, we have that whole fight back and forth
of which one is enabled, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Here it is. Enhanced profile user interface.
There are some things that you can't do in the new that you can do in the old, but that's a topic for an advanced class or a trick.
There we go. And this is what I was more expecting. Okay, so coming back to our sales profile in the new one, I clicked on it. There was delete and clone. Welcome to the enhanced. Show me later. And you're able to see assigned apps, connected apps, object settings, permissions. Okay, this is more login hours. So let's go in here. And because this is a salesperson and we want them to be able to access at any time while they're on the road, we don't want to have any hours established. Otherwise, let's say, just for the sake of time, I want to make sure that we have enough time to talk about next week. Let's say that this is the customer service one. We would want to say, let's say 7 if they work 8 to 5. Let's do 7 to 6 because it would be rude to cut them off when they're middle of a customer. But we do not want them working on Sundays at all. 12 a.m. to 12 a.m. This locks them out for the entire day.
Good.
Whereas this has this, and then none means that they have access the entire day. So just that as an example. And then hopping back to my scenario, let's see how much more I can get through in the last couple of minutes. Okay, access data through any hours, through the manager role. So hopping back to my Salesforce, I want to click on roles. Spencer showed this a little bit. It's a visual of the tree, and you can kind of see how these pull up to each other. Is there a zoom? Yes. So this graphic that's by default shown in the sandbox kind of shows you how things feed into each other. And this is important for reports and dashboards because we have to have access to all the correct objects in order for the reports to populate correctly. But that's why people that are higher up would be able to see reporting on all of their direct reports if they're established well within the role hierarchy.
Yeah, and that's where your reports would be called My Teams, would be your filter setting on that.
Awesome.
Good. Yeah, this is all really good stuff to know, to be aware of.
And then ability to edit but not delete cases. So the way that I would do that let me look here. I would want to you change the profile for the call center representative through administration, users, profiles, and then I could adjust their settings so they could create and read as opposed to create, read, edit, and delete for cases, because you wouldn't want them to delete a case. You'd want them to be able to read and edit to it, so that way they would be able to show how the customer service interaction is escalating for a case, for example.